You know, the world is moving so incredibly fast. So how do you keep up? More than that, how do you learn the hard skills you need to really thrive? Well, today we're going to dive into a pretty aggressive, super focused strategy for doing exactly that. All right, let's just kick things off with a huge question. Imagine if you could get a world-class education. I'm talking about the kind that costs a fortune and takes 4 long years, but without ever actually setting foot on campus. It sounds kind of impossible, right?
Well, it turns out it's not. This guy right here, Scott Young, he decided to put that idea to the test. He couldn't afford to go to MIT, so he just used their online courses, which are all free, by the way, and he basically worked backward from the final exams. And get this, he managed to learn the entire 4-year computer science curriculum in a single year. This insane achievement is what led him to create the whole framework we're talking about today.
And he gave it a name, Ultralearning. Now, this isn't about picking up a casual hobby or just dipping your toes in the water. No. This is about intense, self-directed, deep dives into a subject. The whole point is to compress your learning time as much as possible. It's really a method for getting very, very good at something fast.
So why does any of this matter? What's the big deal? Well, in the world we live in today, being able to learn fast isn't just a nice little bonus skill, it's a massive competitive advantage. And this quote from Young's work just nails it. Ultralearning is the tool that helps you build that advantage.
Okay, so how does it actually work? I mean, it's not magic, right? It's a system. And that system is built on 9 core principles that pretty much act as the instruction manual for this learning superpower.
And here they all are, the 9 principles of ultralearning. Just think of this as the complete toolkit for hitting the accelerator on your learning. Every single one of these, from meta-learning all the way to experimentation, it tackles a really crucial part of the process. Now, we don't have time to go deep on all 9 today, but we are going to focus on 3 of the most powerful ones to get you started.
So let's see how this all comes together, starting with what might be the single most important principle of them all, meta-learning. Seriously, this is the foundation for every single ultralearning project. It's the art of learning how to learn a subject before you even really start.
I mean, think about it. You wouldn't start a huge road trip across the country without a map, would you? So why would you start a major learning project without one? That's what meta-learning is. It's you drawing the map. It's the strategic planning that stops you from wasting months going down the wrong path.
And the process itself is actually pretty straightforward. First, you define your why. What's your motivation? What's the end goal? Then you identify the what, the specific stuff you actually need to know and do. And finally, you figure out the how. What are the best resources and methods to learn all that material?
Let's just zoom in a little on that second step, identifying the what. Young suggests breaking any subject down into these 3 categories: concepts, facts, and procedures. So concepts are the big ideas you just have to understand. Facts are the bits of info you have to memorize, like vocabulary or key dates. And procedures are the things you have to physically practice over and over until they're automatic. When you organize your learning this way, you're basically building your own custom curriculum from scratch.
So how much time should all this planning take? Well, a really good rule of thumb is to spend about 10% of your total expected study time just on this meta-learning phase. So if you think a skill will take you 100 hours, spend the first 10 hours creating a rock-solid map. Trust me, it pays off.
Okay, so you've spent that 10% of your time, you've got a solid map. Now, it's time to hit the road. And this brings us to what Young calls the active principles. These are the tools you're going to use to actually get your hands dirty with the material and build your skills.
And one of the most powerful of these is principle number 3, directness. The main idea here is super simple. We learn best by doing the thing we want to be good at and in the actual context where we'll use it. It's the complete opposite of that passive, abstract, classroom-style learning we're all used to.
This quote just says it all, doesn't it? It seems so obvious, but just think for a second about how often we totally avoid it. We read a book about public speaking instead of just practicing a speech. We study endless grammar rules instead of actually trying to have a conversation. Ultralearning is all about closing that gap.
And right here, this is what directness looks like in the real world. Want to learn to code? Don't just do little abstract exercises. Go build an actual game or an app. Want to learn a new language? The most direct path you can take is to immerse yourself. Go to a country where they speak it. If you can't do the real thing, a simulator is an amazing tool. And for those of you who are really serious, there's the overkill method. Putting yourself in a high-stakes situation, like entering a competition, to force yourself to learn.
All right, so you're learning directly, you're in the thick of it, but how do you make sure all that information actually sticks in your brain? Well, that brings us to our final principle for today, and trust me, it's a big one. retrieval. Just look at this contrast right here. Most of us, when we study, we use passive review. We reread our notes, we highlight passages in a book. It feels like we're being productive, and honestly, it's pretty easy. But study after study shows it's incredibly ineffective. Active retrieval, on the other hand, is all about forcing your brain to pull information out of your memory. It feels hard, but that struggle is exactly what builds strong, lasting knowledge.
And psychologists have this fantastic term for this phenomenon: desirable difficulty. The actual act of struggling to remember something is like a workout for your brain. It sends a powerful signal that this information is important, and that strengthens the connections in your mind. So here's a thought. If your learning feels too easy, you're probably not doing it right. You're not creating that desirable difficulty.
So here are some really practical ways you can do this. Instead of just rereading a chapter, close the book and write down everything you can remember. That's called free recall. Or turn your notes into questions to test yourself later. And of course, the classic flashcard is a perfect retrieval tool. The key takeaway is to test yourself constantly.
So, we've talked about building the map, we've talked about the journey, and we've talked about how to make the memory stick. Really, the only thing left to do is to actually start. It's time to start thinking about your very first ultra-learning project.
And as you're thinking about what to learn, remember this quote. The projects that really succeed aren't just about getting a promotion. They combine a practical need with a genuine passion. That excitement, that's the fuel that's going to get you through the tough, intense moments of this whole process.
So I'll leave you with this question. Now that you've got these principles, meta-learning, directness, and retrieval, what hard skill will you choose to master first? A new language? A programming language? Maybe a musical instrument? The power to learn is literally in your hands. The only question is, what are you going to do with it?